Hello, everyone. Welcome in. A long time no see. I have some interesting updates regarding the civil case and a quick update regarding the criminal case against Alexee Trevizo, as we have all been waiting for the Supreme Court to bring us the decision on whether or not the evidence will be allowed to be used against Alexee at trial in the upcoming trial that is still not yet scheduled due to this decision not having come back yet. But we do have a bit of good news that it is very likely that this decision will be coming back soon. I have good reason to believe that since the decision was accepted by the Supreme Court, since they took up this case in 2024, they will have it decided at the latest by July 15th, 2025, as it would fall into the yearly calendar for the 2024-2025 Supreme Court year in New Mexico. So we can expect at the latest a decision on July 15th when it comes to the conclusion of the Supreme Court's calendar year. It is possible we have a decision before that time based on how many oral arguments there are and what the rest of the Supreme Court's docket is looking like. Unfortunately, it is not transparent. We do not know all of the decisions left on the Supreme Court's docket at this time. So I can't give us an estimate as to if it will be before the deadline or if we will, walk right up to that deadline. But all I can say is that we will have a decision by July 15th, 2025. And with that, it really ties into what we are going to be talking about today, which is that there is currently still ongoing the civil case against Dr. Vaskas and Artesia General Hospital brought by the estate of baby Alexee Trevizo. Now, this wrongful death lawsuit has been cursed since the beginning. It was not only brought upon the wrong Artesia General Hospital district, it was brought in the wrong venue. The original representative for baby Alex passed away and a new representative had to be added in. There has been a multitude of issues. Now, the defendants in this case, Artesia General Hospital and Dr. Vaskas, who is the only named defendant in the case currently, they do not have anyone else named by name from the hospital that night. It is just Artesia General Hospital and Dr. Vaskas currently. Now, with that, they have put forth motions to dismiss this case. They have wanted this case dismissed since the very beginning. There's also now a very interesting development coming from the plaintiffs in this case, which would be the side representing baby Alexee Trevizo against the hospital and Dr. Vaskas. In a turn of events, the plaintiff in this case has asked for a stay of proceedings. That means that the plaintiffs want the case paused. They don't want to be able to move forward in this case until they have more information or the criminal case against Alexee Trevizo is concluded. They would at minimum like to wait until the Supreme Court comes back with the decision, but ideally they are asking for a complete stay of this wrongful death lawsuit because Alexee Trevizo has a right to remain silent and not incriminate herself, her Fifth Amendment right. She is invoking that right, not only in her criminal case, but it is now happening in this civil case. There is a very interesting legal caveat as to if this can actually be stayed for the reasons that the plaintiff is asking. It is not common for a civil case to get stayed because it does cause undue burdenship on the other side. That would mean if they stayed this case, Dr. Vaskas, Artesia General Hospital would have to keep this open in the back of their mind, possibly keep their attorneys on retainer. They have a whole bunch of things going on to keep this ball in the air, where if you brought this case, let's finish it. That's basically the thought process of the defendants in this case, saying, no, we don't want this to be stayed. We want to move forward. It's not fair to us to have to pause. The very interesting legal part of this stay of proceedings motion filed by quote Team Trevizo in the civil case is that all of their case law that they reference to support their motion to try and have the civil case paused refers to a party in the civil case having some sort of issue that would preclude the case from moving forward properly. That argument cannot apply on its face to the reasons given by Team Trevizo in their motion to stay the proceedings, because they are arguing based on the fact that Alexee Trevizo has a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. But Alexee Trevizo is not a party in the civil case. She would be simply a potential witness. The plaintiff in the civil case is baby Alex, represented by the person who would still be alive. That's why this has to happen for wrongful death cases. They have to have a representative of the deceased. So the representative of baby Alex is who is technically the plaintiff in this case. Alexee Trevizo is not a party to the case. And the defendants in the civil case, Artesia General Hospital, Dr. Vaskas, their motions in opposition to stay the proceedings, because they are saying, no, we don't want to pause this case. In fact, we don't even want this case at all. You should dismiss it. But their argument is that the facts raised by Team Trevizo do not match the case law that they are citing, that the potential person who has a Fifth Amendment right isn't a party to the case. They would only be a witness. So with that, I do not think that the plaintiffs, Team Trevizo brought a very strong argument in order to get the motion to stay granted. I don't know if the judge will be swayed. They do have a strong argument in the fact that the Supreme Court is making a decision about this information in the criminal case. But even then, at the very latest that I see that argument being able to stay the proceedings until would be until July 15th, when the decision by the Supreme Court is made, at which point both of these cases would have to move in lockstep with each other, and it would be very hard for Team Trevizo to maneuver. And like I said, Dr. Vaskas and Artesia General Hospital don't even want this to move forward. So in an ideal world, the civil case would completely go away based on not having enough merit. But currently, that is not the path we're on quite yet. Now, I would like to run back the clock a little bit and explain something about this civil lawsuit. Since the civil lawsuit was brought very quickly after Alexee Trevizo was arrested in the summer of 2023, this civil lawsuit was launched against Artesia General Hospital and Dr. Vaskas. For a medical malpractice lawsuit to move forward in the state of New Mexico, it is required for the plaintiff to put in an application and have a hearing with the Medical Malpractice Review Board of New Mexico. It's one of their state rules. According to everything that I could see and find in the first lawsuit, the first civil lawsuit, because there's two now, because the first one was cursed and had to get moved to the right place. In that first civil lawsuit, it went on for over a year without having the Medical Malpractice Board ever have an application by the plaintiff in this case. That means that, for lack of a better term, Team Trevizo in the civil case never applied to have their hearing with the Medical Malpractice Board. That should intrigue us. From everything that I can tell, this has not happened in the second case either. I have not found any indication that there was a Medical Malpractice Board hearing. Now, this needs to be taken into account as we move forward, because I'd like to explain the huge legal pitfalls that are about to like show themselves in the road for Team Trevizo because of the way that they have maneuvered in their cases. So, first and foremost, what can we glean from, for lack of a better term, Team Trevizo, the plaintiffs in the civil lawsuit, not having filed with the Medical Malpractice Board? It could show that they do not want that on the record in the civil case for two reasons, potentially. Number one, say that the Medical Malpractice Board, rightfully so in my opinion, finds that there was no medical malpractice and no wrongful death that occurred at the hospital that night. Should that have to be on the record in the civil case, it could potentially be accessed for the criminal case. And that would be a huge dagger in the criminal's case's defense, because at this point, they are attempting to blame the death of baby Alex on the hospital and the hospital's actions. Should a board of professionals decide that that was not the case before Alexee ever sees the jury, and the motion work happens to get that entered as potential evidence in Alexee's case, that could really undermine the criminal case's way to any kind of not guilty verdict. Because if a board of professionals can say, no, the hospital had nothing to do with this death, and then a jury sees that and is also convinced by the autopsy that baby Alex was indeed born alive, the only person left to blame for baby Alex's death would be criminal defendant Alexee Trevizo in that case. This would not be a good situation for them. This is one of the reasons, in my opinion, it is possible that they didn't file with the Medical Malpractice Board. Not only would it hurt the criminal case, but it could also not be great for the civil case. They would be allowed to proceed should the Medical Malpractice Board say that there was no malpractice and no wrongful death. You are still allowed to bring your lawsuit, but it would not look great as a factual basis in a civil lawsuit against the hospital and against the doctor that a Medical Malpractice Board said, no, that is not what happened. So, further from there, we have the criminal case now awaiting this decision from the Supreme Court. The civil case all but admits by the plaintiff that the decision of the Supreme Court has a huge impact on the civil case. How could that be? It's just evidence in the criminal case. Well, say the Supreme Court acts within the law, in my opinion, according to all the case law that we've studied and gone over here, that the evidence in the Alexee Trevizo case is not privileged. It's not subject to privilege, and it can be used against her in a criminal case. That would severely undermine the claims of the medical malpractice in the wrongful death lawsuit, because a huge complaint that they have is that the police were ever called that night. They are very upset at the hospital for taking action to find out what happened to baby Alex and not from criminal defendant Alexee Trevizo. They decided to bring in an independent third party, the police, to investigate the baby left in the trash can in the bathroom that criminal defendant Alexee Trevizo locked herself in. So with that, both cases severely hinge. It is a huge hinge that they are just balancing on. The literal scales of justice are balancing on what the Supreme Court decides in the Alexee Trevizo case. I still have ultimate confidence that the Supreme Court will be returning, if not all, 90 to 99% of that evidence back to the state. I really do not see any reason for it to have been suppressed in the first place. And as we've pointed out here, there was no case law presented as to why it was suppressed in the first place. It is potentially possible that the Supreme Court is taking so long on this decision because I have read decisions about medical privilege regarding child abuse cases in New Mexico that are very long. To do the research on this, they were very long and very thorough on the wording of the law and the history of how the statute has changed and who it should apply to. This has been a very well navigated part of the law in New Mexico for quite some time. That's why it was very shocking for this evidence to have been suppressed. And it is why you saw the state immediately appeal to the Supreme Court. I find that the state had nothing but confidence that they will be getting this evidence back. We have gone over all of the filings to the Supreme Court from both sides, and I've left it up to you guys to decide which you think were stronger and on point or not. And I think it was very clear to most people that these stronger arguments come from the state, that there actually is a lack of arguments coming from the defendants in the criminal case as to why they can get this evidence back. It was very much turned into a political argument, which, as you all know, if you've watched the videos, I find extremely distasteful, to say the least. I think that the facts of this case should not be mixed with politics. I think it is low, and I also think it is the sign of a desperate legal defense, because they know that they should have never had this granted in the first place for them to have this evidence suppressed. And it is about time that those pitfalls that I mentioned before are going to open for Team Trevizo. I've seen on the Reddit and at other places a lot of sadness, a lot of people thinking that this case is not happening, thinking that this case isn't moving forward. And I do believe that is because it's quiet. It's quiet out here on the internet about the Alexee Trevizo case. It's okay because not every case is viral. Not every case gets the publicity it deserves based on the humanity of the victim, which is how I really care about this case. That's like, I see this as one of the most important cases because I see it as, third crime's a charm. I see that Casey Anthony very likely got away with it, my opinion. I see that Brooke Skylar Richards had a shoddy investigation and got away with a slap on the wrist. And I think that right now, third crime's a charm. I think we're going to have a guilty verdict in the Alexee Trevizo case. And I think it will set the course for some of the mistakes that have happened in other high-profile cases regarding potentially abused and murdered children. And I do think it is high time that these things stop getting sensationalized news and start getting factual-based coverage. And that is why I decided to do this in the first place. And so with that, I do really think that the sadness that I'm seeing, the people thinking that this case isn't going anywhere, it's just quiet. And I promise you, come July 15th, when we get this decision, I think it will be a day of reckoning for our side. The sadness that I see coming out about this case is because the people who feel that Alexee Trevizo is guilty of the crimes that she is charged with feel like we've had losses, just loss after loss after loss. And at this point, I do not think that that will be the course that we are on anymore. You can tell because Team Trevizo, for lack of a better term, is begging to pause the civil case. They are hoping that when this Supreme Court decision comes back, that they are still where they are on the chessboard. And if not, all of their pieces are removed and they are left with their queen. And that's basically the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. That's all they would have left at this point. They do not have a defense if all this evidence is given back. They still, even if this evidence is gone, might have a few more pieces on the board, but they're still very likely to have an uphill battle in trial and end with a guilty verdict for criminal defendant Alexee Trevizo. And so with this evidence being returned to the state, as it very well will be, in my opinion, is the final straw in both of these cases. It will prove that the civil case has no leg to stand on, and it will severely undermine everything that the defense has tried to do and tried to argue up until this point. I am making this video today because there is currently a motion hearing happening in the civil case against Artesia General Hospital and Dr. Vaskas. The motions that have been filed in that case are motions to dismiss and motions to stay the proceedings. I will be giving you guys an update as soon as we know what the outcome of this motion hearing is. It's very possible that no decision was made and that the judge is taking arguments under advisement and will have an order on these motions at some point. It is also possible that the judge will enter an order on some of these motions, which I will immediately give you an update, because that is how we can tell how certain things are going to proceed in both of these cases. Just like we'll be able to tell when the Supreme Court makes their decision and we get that document, we will know exactly what the fate of Alexee Trevizo will be, because I promise you, it's not great. Similar to getting the Supreme Court decision, we will know so much more about how these two cases are going to move forward. And should the civil case not be stayed or dismissed, it is likely to move forward at a rapid pace. There is only so many things that the plaintiffs, Team Trevizo, in that case could do at that point to try and kick the can down the road and get continuances. And there's only so much that they can do, especially after they put all their cards on the table and said, hey, we want to pause. It'll start to get real fishy when you're asking for a bunch of continuances after you've done that. And so not only will we have a clear view ahead of what's going to happen with this civil case, but we will also very soon have a clear view as to how the trial against Alexee Trevizo will proceed. Because I find it very unlikely that even if the state doesn't get any of their evidence back, that they drop these charges and don't go to trial. They still have so much evidence to point to the intentional murder of baby Alex that I just can't see this case ever being dismissed. There is no way, in my opinion. I also think it's very likely we start getting some wins here soon, that we are going to get basically all the evidence back from the Supreme Court decision. If not all, more than not. If not all, like I said, 90 to 99% would be returned. I would put my bet on all of it coming back. That's just my assessment based on the case law, based on everything I've shared with you guys, that it is more likely than not that the judge made a huge error in excluding all of this evidence. The judge didn't cite case law, and I think that is intentional, in my opinion, because she probably couldn't find any. She couldn't find any backing up her decision because all of it says the opposite from what we've seen here, right? So maybe they're like, nah, I couldn't find it. We'll just leave it like this. But with that being said, it is high time that things start moving forward in this case. And it is not unusual for a murder case to take so long to get to trial. It is basically the highest crime charge, right? So you can't really go much higher than that. And so unless you are killing multiple people, I guess, but murder is the top of the chain. You don't just want to rush through a trial, because you want to make sure we do it right. Not only because we want a clean conviction of those who are actually guilty, but we want to minimize the potential of non-guilty people going to prison based on a broken system. So it's not to be, causing dismay for people that it's taking so long, even though I see the chatter. I see that everyone feels as though hope is gone. I promise you, it is not. Things are just about to heat up, and I think that we will be walking on solid ground, and they will be weaving through all these landmines that they have set for themselves in both of these trials when it comes to Team Trevizo. Thank you so much if you made it this far in this video. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And I do genuinely enjoy the conversation. If you're interested in following cases like the Alexee Trevizo case to trial, please subscribe as I'll be covering it all along the way with a legal focus. It's your Friday. I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.